Welcome back, and I'm glad everybody could join us today for a wonderful November podcast where we're going to double click on what I think is the future of AI as far as 2025. So I'm joined here today with my co-host, as always, David Soden. Welcome. And now, David, we have talked repeatedly at length about the hype of Gen AI and some of our history. So can you kind of catch us up on what that journey is?
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. Let me share a couple. I got a bunch of resources to use today, so I'll be bouncing back and forth. Hopefully you guys don't get motion sickness too quick because be a lot of flipping around here. So I wanted to kind of start off by talking kind of through a little bit of history and evolution. So most of the folks that we speak with on a day-to-day basis, kind of ignorant, not really sure how things came to be. But anyway, back in the day, there was a technology in data science essentially called machine learning, and the combination of the two there and there. I won't get into a lot of detailed history, but nonetheless, that led the foundation, and there was lots of great success, but it wasn't, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of awareness, maybe even a lot of interest. While it was cool to the really geeky propeller heads, guilty, that I just wanted to figure out, what this stuff looked like and worked, but the mainstream just really wasn't that interested. And if we fast forward to 2022, the very end of the year, this company that I think some people know of called OpenAI busted out on the scenes with this ChatGPT, and it unlocked a frenzy, and it's been nonstop drinking from the fire hose ever since. And so once that came out in the late 2022, I don't think November-ish, kind of December timeframe, in 2023, everybody was scrambling. Oh, geez, Batman, what are we going to do? There's this new toy here, and oh, man, it's not going to go away. We don't think this is a fad. We better jump on this and get on this. And so everybody did. Everybody still is. A lot of the people that John and I talk to every day, it's those same conversations. And I made a comment about drinking from the fire hose, and that kind of leads us to where we are even today. And there's very few conversations about it. But I want to bring something to your attention, and I'll reinforce what I'm about to say in a second. In 2024, about the middle of the year, maybe even first quarter, end of the first quarter, agents came on the scenes, and this is the new thing. So if you're not familiar with an agent, think of your chat GPT or your chat bots that you're used to, and then taking them offline and putting them in a way that can do a particular role, or a better way for the layman to understand it. It's a digital employee, which also have some negative connotations to it. I get that and understand it. But nonetheless, again, coming from the perspective of people hate doing monotonous widget proverbial, think of assembly lines, that it's just mind-numbing work. Some people may love it, but the majority of us, especially if we work in an office, don't really care to copy and paste out of a spreadsheet and put information into some system. It's just non-rewarding work. So for that, these are where these agents can come along and kind of help that. So in addition to agents, there's this autonomous keyword that is used interchangeably sometimes. So don't get too confused. Automation or autonomous will just say, I'm going to automate this digital employee to some extent. But just like you as a resource, you're an employee in the office, you wear many hats, you probably do different tasks, you have different skills. And so when your boss or a colleague needs something, they know who does what, who's good at what. And they say, hey, Jane, Bob, whoever, can you do or help me with, and you fill in the blank. And so that's kind of the way these agents are going to be now. As digital employees that allow you to scale up and do a lot of additional things. A lot of really cool stuff. Yes, there's some scary stuff. So, you keep your eye on kind of how the evolution of the world unfolds. But I don't think we're anywhere near anything super scary yet. And at the end of the day, next year, looking forward into the crystal ball, is going to be just like the year of 2023, helter skelter. Oh, how are we going to do this? Well, let me back up with what I'm saying. So you may have heard of another smaller, lesser known company called Microsoft, and they've developed this thing called Copilot, and there's 20,000 flavors of Copilot. So you're probably confused in on that. To add even more confusion, we'll add Studio to the mix, and that's kind of where this thing is going to live. But there is this annual conference that they have called Ignite, and they are announcing Copilot Autonomous Agents in there. And so we're going to kind of walk you through a little bit of the pieces today with regards to kind of what all of that is. And before I share one other final piece about autonomous agents from Microsoft, I kind of want to pause here to ask Sean, my colleague, what have I missed, if anything? There might be some good gems of insights or information, because I got a kind of a tunnel vision in my mind, all this plethora of assets that I'm trying to manage today.
Oh, absolutely. So, I think anybody who's been around the block for a couple decades, like you and me, sees that innovation is cyclical. It is, right as you put it, people talked about AI, talked about, large language models coming on the screen and absolutely astonishing people with that experience. 2 years later, it hasn't changed much. But what people are looking at is beyond large language models and are start seeing much more value in large action models. So having an inference about how a response should be is what large language models do. Having an inference on what the next positive action should be is what a large action model is part of. And that is the core of this concept of agents. While it is pretty cool to be able to have a conversation with an AI and get an answer to your question, that really represents the knowledge-based question. What people really are hoping for is to leverage this AI in a much more productive way. And this is where the concept of agent comes in. It's just automation. And automation leveraging AI. And while you're seeing Microsoft start talking about this 2 months ago, Salesforce, we work at a company that has great AI agent capabilities. 5 years ago, AI was linked into IVRs. Yeah. So some of this technology is not quite new. What you can do and how easily you can deploy it and how much productivity gains and how common it is and how easy it is you can digest it. These are the things that are changing in the marketplace today for the most part.
Yep. Sean, just to let you know, I'm not sure if other folks are seeing it, but as I'm watching your video and your audio, it's like a kung fu movie where you see the lips moving and then the audio is not aligning up. There's like maybe a 2 to 5 second delay for some reason. So I'm not sure if something's going on with the podcast or if we've got something. Go ahead and I see you blinked on and off. Go ahead and maybe reset.
Yeah. It seems to be I am on a delay.
Yeah, you're like,
so,
okay.
Let me see if I could drop and come back in.
Okay, sounds great.
Is that any better? Oh, looks like it's not.
Yep. So as we sit here, we'll wait for Sean to come out and come back in again. I may go ahead and try something else. Go ahead.
How's that? Is that
yes?
Yeah. Well,
you're live.
You got to do the Control-Alt-Delete, as we all know.
Yep. Sounds good.
A glitch in the matrix, but we're back. So hopefully some of that came through. The point that I wanted to make is that this technology is evolving, and it was very popular in 2024. But I agree with you, David. What I'm seeing, the writing is on the wall, is that more and more people are going to start employing agents to get real business value next year.
This is true. And automation kind of going to go along hand in hand with that. As we move through some of the presentation and slide two, make a call out because people might think that adding AI and automation is still just automation, but it's really the next definition of hyper automation. But let's start with this video that Microsoft has put out They talk a little bit. It's about 3 minutes long, but they kind of walk through a demo. I personally don't have access to it. I have access to the current version of Copilot Studio, but there's components in there that's missing. And then maybe if we have time, I could pull up a copy of Copilot behind the scenes and kind of show you where some of those changes are going to be. But I'll just go ahead and add this to the screen now.
With Copilot Studio, customers now have the power to build autonomous agents to drive AI-first business process. Let's take a look at how McKenzie Company, one of the largest global management consultancies, is piloting a client service agent with these new Copilot Studio capabilities. Say a prospective McKenzie client sends an email requesting an engagement.
Yep.
As soon as the email is received, the agent gets to work extracting the relevant details. It then follows a series of steps, including verifying any previous engagements with this customer, validating the industry sector, summarizing the client needs, and identifying the appropriate McKenzie expert to meet with the client. It then writes and sends an email to the selected expert with the relevant client details, the agent effectively reasoning over the situation to come to a resolution. It's been given operational guidelines in Copilot Studio, and it can think and act within those guardrails to get the job done. Now let's go behind the scenes to see how the agent was built. It started in Copilot Studio with simple instructions outlining the job it needs to perform. In this case, the agent's tasked with fielding all incoming engagement requests from McKenzie clients.
It is
that means it monitors inbound requests, identifies the right McKenzie partner to meet with the customer, and sends an email to finalize the details. The agent has clear triggers, which allow it to work autonomously. It's on 24/7, looking for those triggers. In this case, it's looking for an email. But it could also be triggered by events from a wide range of sources, including line of business applications. The agent has a knowledge base, enabling it to tap into both your productivity data, leveraging the Microsoft Graph, and your line of business systems across knowledge sources like SAP, ServiceNow, and Fabric. Finally, the agent has clearly defined actions it can take to get work done. And you can add new actions from over 1,500 data connectors. Based on the specifics of each incoming request, the agent identifies and executes the most appropriate actions for the situation. If you want to see what the agent is working on, you can go to the Activity tab. You just saw how the agent managed one engagement, but this agent is actively managing dozens of inbound requests from many different clients, all at the same time. You can see its performance at the top, or delve deeper in the Analytics tab. There are some instances when the agent knows it needs to escalate to a human. Let's take a look at one of those. We can see the steps the agent already completed, but then it got stuck. Let's dig deeper to see what happened. It looks like it couldn't find the partner, as he is no longer at the company. This triggered a flow where the agent needed to escalate to a human. Let's jump to BizChat, where we can see the notification from the agent. Copilot presents all relevant information from the manager to verify. The manager decides to manually reassign the engagement to someone else on the team. Now the agent can continue to work, processing the final details and sending an email to the right people. In piloting this agent, McKenzie Company found lead time could be reduced by 90% and administrative work reduced by 30%. That was just one example of an agent being piloted. Soon, we anticipate every organization will have a constellation of agents that support individual employees, teams, and functions to orchestrate business processes. Copilot Studio will be where you build these agents, and Copilot will be where you interact with them. With Copilot Studio, every customer has the power to build their own custom autonomous agents.
So, as you can see, it's really pretty interesting. Unfortunately, the technology platform that we're using, the audio as the host of it, doesn't always present the audio to us as the host, but I did double check. So the audio is definitely coming out on the stream that you see on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So we're good to go there. Unfortunately, Sean probably and painfully had to sit through just watching that, not hearing anything of what was being said. So he's a little bit in the dark with kind of the context of the audio there. But just wanted to call out, that was a demo with Microsoft and McKenzie Company that they used at one of their last conferences. I'm sure they'll be showing that again here at Ignite. And so I just want to take you behind the scenes really quick to Copilot today and call out some nomenclature changes, because you're going to start hearing in Copilot Studio, instead of co-pilots, and it's kind of ridiculous too, because you use Copilot to make additional new custom Copilot. So it's almost like a Copilot for a Copilot for a Copilot, like nested rushing doll, or the nested rushing doll. So it just gets kind of crazy. So what they're doing is they're renaming Copilots to agents, and this is going to cause a lot of confusion, even more probably than what already is. And the reason for that is because for those that are more technically advanced in traditional code and programming, to them, an agent means something quite and literally specific. And on OpenAI, it means something quite literally specific. Here, a Copilot, or the new terminology agent, just means a Copilot that can do things that you want it to do. To add another layer of confusion, there is this thing called actions, which you saw in the video. Now, actions are pretty much lots of different things, but the most popular and most powerful component of this is flow, which is Power Automate. And so what you do is you create a flow. And so a lot of people, this is where the confusion is going to start to happen, because people try to understand things from a perspective or lens of what they know. Hence the term rose-colored glasses, everything's rosy, right? But in this case, if you know a lot of areas in the Power Platform, you know anything about regular programming, the nomenclature is going to spin your head around. So if you're in Copilot Studio, first and full stop, just know that the entire purpose of the output of this is for you to create some sort of Copilot that's going to get consumed based on whatever it is that you choose as the destination. Now, they don't call them destinations, they call them channels. Now, the channels vary from the various places that you can see. They could be social media externally, so be careful with proprietary and custom inside the walls data. I'm sure your security teams are going to love that aspect. And then you're going to have Microsoft Teams, which is a nice quick win. You can also publish down into SharePoint, but you'll use the custom code and the custom site for that. They have their own built-in demo website, which is a little misleading because it definitely works different on a real site than it does on their demo site. This is a nice quick win for testing outside of this test environment. But the point is, you can publish to a lot of these endpoints. And then here's a really great key, is that anybody experiencing from a user perspective these Copilots, if they get frustrated with the bot and they want to get to an agent or speak to a human or get a hold of a human, these are your escalation paths. So your customer engagement opportunities, AKA hub, is down here. And these are the current connectors. One of the companies that Sean and I work with uses this Genesis quite a bit, as well as Salesforce and Dynamics 365. And of course, there's custom endpoints that you can create as well. But, you know, if you've ever used Power Virtual Agents, Microsoft loves to, what do they say? Put lipstick on the same animal and call it something new and shiny. And basically, this is Power Virtual Agents under the Power Platform stacked on with something absolutely fantastic and new, which is, you know, under the hood, it's OpenAI, their partnership, but they're starting to break away or branch out to become a little bit more diversified with what LLMs and what agents are available to the backside. And I even use that word agent as well. But they're definitely coming up with different ways of retooling the same thing. So, but again, this is Power Virtual Agents. You may notice this. I'll pop into one of these. This is like a flow, or we call it a conversation flow. And topics are inference based. So if you create a bunch of topics and you put a bunch of great keywords in there, the robot is supposed to, and this is before chat, OpenAI, and it was fantastic the way that it worked. A lot of work, but it still worked very, very well. And you were able to create a chatbot experience that gave very niche and specific information. Well, now you can take all of this on steroids, still drive it with topics, but you can also let AI drive it. And this is really the purpose of AI, an orchestration intelligence. I'll just leave it as a generic term, as that will drive and employ and ask your digital employees, the agents, what to do. So a Copilot can be a delivery of a chatbot across those various channels that we talked about, but a Copilot now going to be renamed to agent, you will specifically, just like you saw in the demo video, create something very specific to do one particular thing. And then through topics and through other orchestrations of copilots, custom copilots, you can do a whole bunch of really, really cool stuff. So think about an agent whose job is to serve HR in your company, and you're going to not necessarily have a maybe an entry-level employee in HR answer mundane and monotonous questions. What is my PTO balance? What are the policies for X, Y, and Z? This system can handle all of that and reach into all of the different various endpoints through these actions and navigate it through topic. And then if that isn't enough, you can supplement it with knowledge. And these knowledge endpoints could be public websites, a SharePoint site. You could also do Dataverse, which is the database or SQL server that is on the platform. And then you have all these advanced, which I have to change my security in order to get into that. But there's a whole bunch of additional databases and connectors. So think about Power Flow and Automate. Anyway, you can connect into all of these other endpoints. So Copilot Studio and agents and the autonomous agents, which means you set this up like a flow. It will have a trigger, just like Power Automate does now. And then that will fire off these autonomous agents in series or singular, depending on how you craft and create your copilots. And so if we take the focus away, from Copilot, I want to show you that it's not all fun and games in the neighborhood. There's another link that I want to share with you. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, so here is something I want to call out because everybody's probably getting super excited, and I was too. But there is a limitation I need to make everybody aware of, and that is if you're building Copilot and you have what I had, which I'll call delusions of grandeur, that all of a sudden I'm going to turn Copilot loose and it's going to go through my document library that I have, thousands or tens of hundreds of thousands of documents sitting out there. And I'm just going to feed that knowledge into this Copilot, and I'm going to magically ask it a question, and it's going to bring forth all this knowledge embedded in the documents. The optimistic and positive answer is yes, it can do that. But due to memory limitations right here, let me blow this up so it's front and center. Due to memory limitations, generative answers can only use SharePoint files that are under 3 megabytes. I don't know about you, but my SharePoint document library has a plethora of documents, almost all of them, a handful are 3 megabytes or less, but that's not very big. So if you're expecting to see lots of information come back out of your Copilot and you're like, hey, where's my documents? And you want to spend hours troubleshooting, let me save you time. Just reference this document. As of now, I'm sure this will change, but here's the really bad thing. Consider splitting it into smaller multiple files. I don't know about you, but if I had 10,000 to 100,000 documents, then I had to take my 30, 40, 50 megabyte, whatever size files, because maybe it's a small file. Maybe I only have 3 pages, but maybe somebody in their infinite wisdom embedded a very large graphic that's like 20 megabytes or something, right? Which is not uncommon. And now my file is bloated, but I don't really have a lot of text. That document's going to get completely chucked out and not going to be used. So how do you fix that? Well, you could think of creating a separate document library and creating some IT process that will go along and chunk up and split up these documents, but it's not human readable. So what's the purpose of this? Why would you do that? Hopefully the answer and the conclusion that you come to is it's not a very good idea. What you should do is consider Azure AI services. In the service stack, they have Azure AI Document Intelligence, which is also built in a platform called AI Builder. It has models that go in and extract information or assimilate information out of your documents. And by the way, Copilot and Azure AI Studio are synergistically work together. I want you to think of it one of two ways. Your low-code citizen developer, bad term these days, but your entry-level or non-heavy coder person can use that Copilot Studio experience. But if you need extra power, you need to find information for unstructured documents. This is where the power of AI and pro devs are going to come to the rescue. They're going to launch something like Azure AI Studio. They're going to integrate it with Copilot Studio. And the two of you can work hand in hand to produce something absolutely astronomical for your business, high business impact. Here's another one, AI search. So as you have all this unstructured data, turn it loose. Turn it loose on everything you've got inside of there, integrate it, put it into a Copilot, and then put it into a SharePoint site, or put it in Teams and create a special channel, or segment that to match the structure of your organization. The point is, combinations are absolutely endless, and the opportunities are literally boundless as well. So that's kind of the high-level overview of the Microsoft landscape and architecture, what's coming, going to be announced, and how you might think about this in moving forward, and hopefully a couple of tips to help you avoid some common pitfalls that when you're first getting started with this is going to be quite common, because fortunately I had to go through the pain of figuring that out, and I thought I'd share that pain experience with you. All right, so I'm going to pause there, and I will get into some of the presentations. But Sean, can you kind of talk a little bit about some of the customers that we've talked to and worked with on how some of the impact of this technology, how it's going to revolutionize and maybe change how they think about generative AI and just AI in general? It's just another perspective to think about.
I remember, I'd have to say it was about 10, 15 years ago. I had a conversation in a boardroom about automation, and that automation is going to add about 10% productivity if you use it. And that the value of that automation is dependent upon how smart you can make the automation agent. And that RPA, as it was back then, was all the rage, that if you can point and click, you can do some automation. But what we found when people were trying to use this technology is the kind of work, the monotonous work that people do, does require some kind of brain, right? That's what you pay these people to do it. It's very important. So how can you go through and augment those people? This is where the term Copilot came from, right? How can you make people who have to have that judgment more productive? And that's certainly the story of 2024. Now, agents, generative AI, you can start adding some reasoning to that. And if your use case is fault tolerant, you could certainly advance things. I believe I talked, maybe it was last time or the time before last, we did a podcast around a use case around you have somebody who has to have some kind of lawyer understanding to reading contracts. And then you need somebody who understands the technology, the machine that needs to be fixed. And this correlation of forces is really difficult to do in humans, and very costly to do with humans. Well, you can certainly lower that bar with an agent like this. And I think that's where people are going. These complex situations that RPA doesn't apply, these low-cost leaders, if you will, on use cases, these fault-tolerant use cases, there are plenty of that. But if you think that people are going to deploy a Microsoft agent to do surgery or be your AI nurse, that's just not going to happen. But there's plenty of room, as I say, for Jello. There's plenty of room here to be able to accelerate businesses. 10 years ago, it was 10%. We're seeing, even with Copilot situations, that you can get 60%. With these agents, you may be able to push 80, 85% productivity gains. And, this is really why I believe the game is changing here.
Yep, it is. And just a kind of a quick call out too, is that unfortunately I've had a couple of projects as of late where RPA was actually a potential consideration for the requirement because of where it falls into. Uniquely, because of the call out that you mentioned, I call them deviations along the workflow or the work path. I mean, people always have, and I'll use this word again, it's somewhat negative connotation, but it's still true. People have these delusions of grandeur that things are the way that they are, right? That's how they have to be. They've always been this way. They can't be any other way. That thought process of just restricted, narrow, focused thinking will be very painful as you go through these types of processes. And so there's a couple lessons, being open-minded and then using tools. I'll call out another Power Platform tool. People don't think of the tool to be used in this way, but it's absolutely fantastic. Power Automate has a component called process mining. If you have the recorder on this person's machine that's going to do the RPA training, meaning they're just recording a macro, for lack of a better term, this process miner, if you do this step before you do the RPA, it will help you from pulling your hair out and help you identify those deviations or standard deviations. The concept here is as it's recording, it logs, I do this, then I do that, then this, and you see the path. But you also see these little fine hairs or thicker hairs that come off of the main trunk. The main trunk is the ideal, what you thought was happening is true. It is, but what you didn't recognize are these little things that come off the side. These are your deviations. These are your paths. These are your use cases. These are your exceptions. This is the human brain that needs to be involved. And so there are ways that are coming into focus now, especially on the Microsoft stack, where Copilot or copilots and autonomous agents could be thrown into the RPA mix to round out that weakness that Sean just illustrated. So it's an exciting time. I don't expect anything like that until maybe 2026, but trust me, this stuff's like drinking from the fire hose, and Microsoft is coding the water to go into the fire hose for everybody to drink. So it's just absolutely getting totally crazy with what's going on here. So kind of take us to the second half or to the backside of all of this. And by the way, this document, as well as another document, let me share that real quick here. On our LinkedIn group page, by the way, I always keep forgetting to mention this to you guys, but we do have a Transformation Leaders podcast page. This document and then the one I'm about to go through is up here. So you can go there, grab a copy of it, download it, repost it, share it, whatever you'd like to do. But these resources are available for you online there. And to get to that area, go ahead and scan this QR code with your phone and or device, and that'll take you and land you right there on that page. So there's nothing to do. Otherwise, we'll follow up with comments on our post through the various social medias, and we'll post a link to the group for you to be able to find that. And hopefully you'll join the group. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to talk about 7 ways that large language models may not be as strong as the new counterpart that's coming up and coming. So think of this multi-agent, or the ability to do multi-agents on top of your old school, only 1 year old, right? We're calling it old school already. Large language models. And so let's kind of kick this up to the next level. So here we're talking about they lack the ability and they struggle with reasoning. Now, this is argumentative because OpenAI came out with their O1 model that's supposed to address some of this, and it does to a certain extent. But people are still struggling on how and when to use this. And so anyway, the multi-agent concept is yet another probably more realistic approach and going to be more industry standard maybe than a particular model by OpenAI. But I do credit them for having at least tried to tackle this from the LLM layer or level. But in any event, that's number 1. Sean, do you have anything to add to that point before we move on to point number 2?
Yeah, certainly large language models, as I was talking about before, their Achilles heel is reasoning. And they're trying to add more of it through repetition, and basically ask it as many times as possible until you get the answer that you want. And we'll see how that. Yeah, exactly. So the hope is that while they keep getting better, the real focus needs to be not on getting a textual answer, but making a decision. And that's why people are changing the game.
Sean, you want to lead us to number 2?
Yeah. So adding in your data is the most important thing, because as I've said repeatedly, I like to say it, that most large language models are trained on data from the internet, and shouting at the internet never works. So what you will want to do is create your own action model and enrich a large language model engine with that data, so that it doesn't have the wrong options, right? Again, if you're in healthcare, do you really need to know how to change a spark plug on a Chevy Nova? This is the problem that people have with 3 trillion bits of data in a large language model. So this is really where I believe the future is going to be, is around taking your data, compressing it in an action model. And what of a lot of the big names out there, Salesforce, I know the company I work for has that as well, where you can conversationally tell an agent, just like you would hire somebody off the street, sit them down. Okay, Sean, when the phone rings, they're going to talk about these 3 things. If they talk about this, do this. If you see this, do that. And then you could just type that in English. I remember Google in 2023 saying the number 1 programming language of 2024 was going to be English. They were wrong.
Close.
But, maybe it's 2025. And I think agents are really the opportunity to open up automation in a much more democratic way. Low code, no code was supposed to be about citizen developers, which is a cringy term. Agents with conversational AI can really democratize automation. And the more automation you have, at least controlled automation, the more value you could probably get.
Well, that's a great point, and a great segue, whether it was intentional or not, to number 3. So Sean and I, and Sean kind of deals with this a little bit more than I do, but we've done it together at multiple companies. But I want you to think of, and I also kind of tongue-in-cheek said it earlier about Microsoft Copilots building other Copilots. It's like Copilots for Copilots. Well, here we're talking about LLMs for LLMs, but serving different purposes. One of them could be a governance and compliance layer. So maybe you've got an LLM that's straight out of the box from the manufacturer, or you made it yourself. But it could hallucinate and say all kinds of bad stuff. Another technique or tactic that people do is, for that LLM, they build another LLM or build an agent whose purpose is to govern or act as a governance layer, a proxy layer between the user and the LLM. So its purpose is to detect hallucinations or bias or something really bad. Like that's a use case, of course, here. But another one, where we're talking about memory tasks for continuity, context windows. You probably hear LLMs, I don't know, 128K, 100K, or 70 or 16, and you're like, huh? What does that mean? It just means the amount of information in a session that you can throw at it that it can handle contextually in memory. And what most folks don't know, and there's no instruction manual to tell you this, the way most of the technology that works in these chat models, it takes anything in the middle, into trash can it goes. And then all of a sudden it loses its memory or context to what's going on. So that's essentially what we're referring to here, how agents working together in unison to accomplish a task can maybe help and or transform that experience. Any additional points on that one?
No, I mean, the creating of agents in a low code, no code is really what's making this technology much more consumable. I remember 10 years ago with WinTask, if you remember that tool, you could hit the record button, click, 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 and then save it. That kind of RPA functionality really opened up what you could do with RPA. this low code, no code capability with agent automation is probably going to accelerate that. That's one of the main points that I have of why I believe 2025, there's going to be so much agent work.
Yep, exactly. And a lot of these 7 points, and this is not all inclusive by any imagination. This is just us kind of priming your thought or thinking process, as you go through these types of experiences, or you have the consideration for LLMs and the new agent that's about to take over your company and your thought process. And I think I got a little ahead of myself with the last one because I kind of jumped the gun here and added a little bit of this point into the last point. But Sean, you want to maybe have some ideas around that, since I kind of cheated and added some stuff into this? You may have a perspective or take on it too as well.
Yeah, I remember reading there was some research being done to essentially program a model with the perspective of being, hey, you're a product manager, you're a UI developer, you're a back-end developer, and here's your role, and then executing and having them be able to communicate and interface with each other to basically simulate. I believe Stanford did this project. And this was earlier the year, and it really did produce good outcomes, because when there is a hallucination, the other agents on the team kind of say, wait a second, let's back up. This doesn't make sense. What did you say? So I absolutely believe that this is going to be part of things. You will want and I think we talked about it on the last call, you will want a security agent, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to test, okay, is this, whatever's being said, is it biased? Is it this? Do I need to apologize? Having a watcher for the watchers, yep. Right? To be able to kind of reactively handle interactions. I think this is all part of the future of AI interactions when a human has to talk to an agent.
So our next slide, I feel as though speaks for itself, because it is the bridge mechanism of everything we're talking about today. Think about if you are employing any sort of AI system, probably you're doing some sort of RAG with it, whether you know it or not, whether you're giving it, priming it with examples, or you're giving it a vectorized database, or you've even gone to the extent of fine tuning your own model. Either way, it's still some format of RAG, meaning you're giving your information there. Fine tuning technically doesn't fall into that category, but nonetheless. So this should go without any introduction or saying, and we can spend a little bit more time on number 6 and 7 here, but just know that the main point or takeaway, I could speak from experience, and something that I've written is that I used the same model, but I just made multiple passes using the same thing. So they were iterative, meaning one step, then the next step, then the next step. Where here, you basically build these digital employees, and they're there for maybe an orchestration intelligent layer to then go out and capitalize on that. So I would definitely do it differently today than how it's going to be tomorrow, or even the new today. All right. So let's move on to number 6. And let's see, I forgot what this one was here. Multi-crew AI. Yeah. Okay. So back
to is swarms, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I read a fascinating article the other day about a government entity using swarm to control drones. So the idea is, where is the drone should be going? And this is certainly military applications. And
Blue Angel, like.
Yeah, exactly. The value of drones is this concept of quantity over quality, right? The downside is controlling them. So having generative AI taught to be able to manage each one, and then in a multi-agent framework. And I believe OpenAI has this concept called Swarm, which is multi-agent. But there's quite a few of these out there, and there's only going to be more. because as we talked about before, having one perspective tackle a problem. This is why we as humans work as teams. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody has a different background. Everybody has a different role. And we're used to solving problems as teams. So using AI as teams makes sense.
And we have one final one. And to wrap up, this is something, again, that I think we've covered in depth pretty much in a lot of our previous calls. But this is a good problem to have, because if you have this problem, you've done something right. Okay, so do not be distressed about this one at all. But there's just, again, it's potentially the same issue, but at scale and or a way of handling it a little bit differently through different techniques. And if you've got something that's working, then you should be able to essentially invoke or ask it to do it again and again and again, or in parallel or in asynchronous, whatever. I'm getting technical now. But the point is, if you got whatever you've got working that's right, you can essentially just kind of scale up and or through that. I had another piece of information that I somehow forgot about, and I can't remember where it is. But anyway, it was something to kind of illustrate that point. Anyway, any other topic or point to add on this one?
No. I mean, again, this is exactly what happened with cloud, right? The number one challenge I see with cloud is how do we balance value with cost, right? Yes, you could spin up and do 10 things at once in the cloud, but is it more valuable to add some latency in and do it serially instead of parallel? And then you could save money this way. So that is certainly, I think, more of a 2026 problem, that last slide. But for the ambitious out there who are stepping into agents now or in Q1, definitely by Q4, you're going to get a phone call saying, hey, you're spending X, you're generating Y. Can you change those numbers?
True.
And that's just the way of the world. I mean, there's a maturity curve for all technologies. And I think agents are on this, finally getting to the place of we could start achieving the outcomes that they were designed to do.
Yeah. A quick call out too for some technology. So OpenAI obviously has some tool sets for you out there. If you've not used the open source tool, of another colleague of mine, I've introduced him to it, and he's absolutely fallen in love with it. And I had created remarkable outputs from this tool. It's called Flowwise. It has the ability to tap into the existing OpenAI frameworks, but also inside of itself, you can build these agents within the workflow. So build your digital employees, put your orchestration layer in front of it. You can use OpenAI LLMs, private LLMs, custom LLMs, LMNOP, QRS, whatever you want to add to it. The point is, sky's the limit. So whatever your need is, start thinking of ways to make co-pilots with your employees, whether you're using Flowwise or something like a Copilot. But the point is, it's going to get to the point, middle to the end of next year, you're not going to be able to hide from this. It's coming to a store near you. It's coming to a company near you. So just know that it's there, and you want to be the one to be in the know. So attend podcasts like these to talk about these types of technologies. We're here every Wednesday to talk about an interesting topic, usually around AI of some sort of whatever, but we are mainly also focused and try to put a point on leadership and being transformative in your business so that you can do the next greatest, best thing. And hopefully within an ethical guideline as well. That's good for everybody. Anything else to add, Sean?
No. Again, love to hear from you. Post comments. We'd love to see what other kind of resources that you need from us. And, as always, reach out. We love to talk about these topics. We're helping many Fortune 500 people out there on getting the outcomes that they want. So, reach out and we'd love to talk to you.
Sounds great. I'm going to pop that QR code up so you can join our LinkedIn group, and that'll help you kind of keep in contact with us. Obviously, reach out to Sean and I individually. And if you post something to the group, then even if we're not available to answer your question, somebody that's a member of the group might be able to answer it for you. But in any event, that is it for this week's show. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.